Hello, everybody. We are back. I'm Tom Sosnoff. He's Dylan Radigan. This is Truth or Skepticism. Mr. Radigan, how art thou?
I've never been better, sir. Never been better. And I'm happy to say I'm no longer on the side of a road at an Italian gas station, but I'm comfortably inside of a proper residence here in the United States of America. So I am happy to be here, although I'm as usual, I'm gravely concerned, but we'll get to that.
What would a Truth or Skepticism be like if you weren't gravely concerned?
It's really the reason why this entire program exists, is to address my grave concerns.
Yes. Well, I'm looking forward to today's little discussion, episode, whatever you want to call it, debate. And I'm all fired up. I'm ready to go.
Okay, well then let's have at it, shall we? I was reading recently in the newspaper some of the coverage of the fate of our young people. So many bright minds, so many young ladies and young men with so much creativity and ambition, so much to offer to the world. And yet the statistics can be somewhat disturbing. Specifically, they were discussing the future of those who may complete substantially beautiful educations at elite institutions that end up not taking a job inside of their major or their field of study, but rather end up taking jobs sometimes that are substantially different. The most extreme example would be a finance major or a biology major or whatever, any major, who then, instead of taking a job as a biologist or in finance or in whatever it may be, if their first job is an entry-level job because they can't get the job in their career, i.e., the most extreme example would be a job at McDonald's, let's say, that the entire future of their career is determined not so much by the nature of their education, but the nature of their first job. And that if the first job is one that is not in alignment with the intentions of the major, but rather a McDonald's or a lower status, lower paying job, that affects the entire duration of their career.
And you're saying you believe this?
No, I'm
confused as to where, okay.
Yeah, no, I understand. I'm layering the onion here.
I got that. But somebody writes an article that suggests that somebody goes to college and doesn't get a job in what they went to college for, whatever their major is, and therefore that's an indictment of the entire system because they had to get a part-time job driving for Uber or delivering for, DoorDash. Is that what you're trying?
Sure. No, that's not what I'm trying to say.
Okay, then I misunderstood.
Yeah, no, clearly.
What are you trying to say then? Because I'm very curious because
here's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Education is losing its value. It's overpriced. It is a basically scam that is being run against the young people of America to seduce them into some illusory belief that if they go down this path of higher education, that then they will be established in some level of security or whatever their dreams may be thereafter, only to find that that's not the case. Only exacerbating that factor further is the obvious aspect of AI and some of these other threats to job placement. At the same time, we're seeing jobs like plumber and electrician, highly skilled labor jobs, pay you $500,000 a year, $400,000 a year, 600, real money, big money, much more than you would make as a marketing or finance or biology, entry-level position. And it is clear this basically COVID had a huge effect on this, but also the cultural aspects are having a huge effect on this, particularly with young men, statistically, where the participation and engagement of the traditional path of going through higher education and then securing some path towards security has been substantially compromised and is more at risk now than it has ever been. And that the mindless hamster wheel, that would be the word I would be looking for, the mindless hamster wheel upon which we send all of our 17 and 18-year-olds, and the amount of stress and the burden of exams and money and entry and blah, 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 is a false path and is proving itself more than ever to be a false path. And that false path is increasingly being interpreted by the younger generation as a betrayal. And that it is our obligation as somewhat older individuals in society who have the benefit of more access, more resources, perhaps more wisdom on a good day, to start to help these young people, not simply by mindlessly sticking them on the hamster wheel to go then get a job as an Uber driver, but to expand the scope of possibilities for 17 and 18-year-olds away from higher education to allow them to actually secure themselves in the reality of this economy, whether it's by, I'd rather they learn how to be a tasty trader at 18 and learn how to manage risk and learn how to.
All right. I've heard enough.
You got it now?
I've heard enough. This is
the key phrase. The key phrase, and then I will let you speak and I will stand down, is mindless hamster wheel.
Mindless hamster wheel. Got it. Okay. We've been doing this show now for a long time. 8 years, 9 years, 10 years.
11 years. No, 11 years.
11 years.
2013.
11 years. This is the worst position I've ever seen you take. Of all the crazy stuff you've come at me with, of all the sides that you've taken over the last 11 years, this takes the cake. This is the most outrageous of any position I've ever seen you take. I don't believe for 1 second that you believe one thing that you just said. Like, I don't believe that you buy into anything you just said. I think you're just trying to, you know me, and you're trying to stroke something. You're trying to just light a fire. You're trying to get me to go, to go off or something. But there's not a chance you can believe in one thing you said. The idea that education, any level, but in this case, we're talking about higher education.
I'm talking about university education.
I mean, if you want to say
50 or 60 grand a year,
at 80 grand a year, at 100 grand a year, doesn't matter what it is. If you want to say that higher education,
as long as you're paying,
if you want to say that higher education is expensive and it's cost prohibitive and it's everything else, okay, I'll give you it's expensive. If you want to say
that's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying.
I know. But if you also want to say that the system, we've talked about this before, needs to change with respect to you kind of like pay to play, meaning the price you pay for different degrees and different kinds of education will change with the actual degree and things like that. So the prices will scale. I'm fine with that too. That's the way education should evolve. That said, the idea that education, that we'd be better off if everybody went to air conditioning school or plumbing school or some trade school. The idea that, all of a sudden, like I read the Mike Rowe article, which was absolutely idiotic because you take some actor who does some TV show that's promoting propaganda-wise his own stupid TV show, and he goes out and says, hey, you know what? People are taking their Harvard certificates off the wall because it's embarrassing to be a graduate of Harvard and nobody needs to do that. Everybody should go to trade school. It was really it was not just self-promoting, but it was kind of one of the worst arguments I've ever heard. This country is great because we allow kids when they're 18 rather than go straight into the workplace. I mean, I know, sure, you can go straight from high school into the NBA. You can go straight from high school into the military. You can do certain things. But the reality is that most kids at 18 years old are not ready to go straight into the workforce. Most kids are not intellectually mature enough, and they're not ready to go into these roles. The reason that AI is what it is today, and the reason that these companies have exploded, it's not because, I get it, some of these geniuses never went to college and stuff like that, but they're geniuses. When you look at most people, the reason our economy is as strong as it is, the reason we have companies that are as great as we do, the reason that we are able to do things with data scientists and PhDs in finance and PhDs in math and everything else is because we have an amazing system of higher education, and we are able to essentially build this infrastructure, build this foundation of incredibly smart people. And this happens, that's why people send their kids from all over the world to US institutions, because we have a way of integrating both education and a maturation process that essentially sets you up to be whatever it is you want to be. And if it's part of kind of being a pure capitalist, so be it. I guess my point is the idea that again, anybody can say education is expensive. Fine. You can even argue it's overpriced, but you can't argue it's not worth it. You cannot argue that. You cannot argue that, hey, you know what? I would have been better off. And you can't argue that because you go to school for one thing, you might end up doing something else, and therefore school makes no sense. I went to school as a political science major because we didn't really have finance when I went to school, and I ended up in the world of finance my entire career. That's totally fine. That's a good thing.
Tom.
Yes.
You're missing my point.
I don't think so.
All the things you're saying were true in the past.
Okay.
It's a different world today.
I don't think it is.
The key statistic is the most influential component of your future career is not your degree at SUNY Albany or my degree at Union College, but it's your first job at DLJ or my first job at Bloomberg.
Okay.
And that getting a first job at a place like an investment bank or a place like a big news organization is much more influential over the entire balance of the remainder of the next 50, 70 years of your life and your career.
Of course.
Than where you went to school.
Of course, I agree with you. But Dylan Ratigan does not get hired by Bloomberg if Dylan Ratigan is some kid out of high school in Lake Placid, New York.
Of course.
Yeah.
But we're in agreement, and I'm not saying that, and if Tom Sosnoff doesn't get hired at DLJ if he doesn't have a bachelor's degree from anywhere,
right? Exactly,
nobody, right? Like I uncontested. But what the research is pointing out is that in the past, if you had these various degrees and you're Tom or you're Dylan, the probability that you're going to get a look to go be whatever the entry level position is at a bank or at a news organization or at a research laboratory, could be anything. That first placement is much more important, and I agree with you that to qualify for those placements, the university degree is basically a prerequisite. The issue now is that belief continues to bring people through a system where they're no longer getting those placements. And when the placement goes from bachelor's degree to Uber driver, bachelor's degree to DoorDash delivery man, woman, bachelor's degree to fast food cook.
So you're advocating for some form of a socialist system where because you got a degree, you are entitled to a job? Because you got a degree in finance, you are entitled to a job in finance?
What I'm saying is that the value of the degree, which used to qualify for you for the banking, laboratory, news agent, fashion house, whatever job, is no longer delivering the goods.
That's not even remotely true. That is a ridiculous argument that is made by people, that don't feel like working hard enough to get that job, or looking hard enough to find that job, or essentially doing whatever it takes to get that job. Most people go through many stages until they get the job that they really want, the perfect place. Like if you want to come work at Tasty, you can't get in through the front door unless you have at least an undergraduate degree and probably a graduate degree now. And you don't even get in the front door without that. My point is, and it's not that we believe there's plenty of smart kids out there that are straight out of high school, but they're not ready. They're not ready. And there are certain things, and not everybody gets hired exactly for the thing that they've kind of studied for. We're looking for the best available people, and every company is looking for the best available people. And then we're going to take those people and put them in positions that we think are best for them. They might not think it's best for them, but we think it's best for them. And then we see what happens from there. But the idea that you're entitled to a job just because you went—
Again, you're putting words in my mouth. What I'm saying is the frequency with which the degrees no longer propel the degree holders into the domain of their aspirations is higher than it has ever been.
But that's not even remotely true. That's my point. You're saying that based on there's no facts to back that up. I mean, what you're saying is just what somebody wrote because they were pissed off that they had to, pay for, $250,000 for 4 years of Harvard. That's a ridiculous argument. Most people go into the fields and there's plenty. Unemployment's the lowest it's ever been. One of the reasons unemployment is the lowest it's ever been is because we have lots of jobs, and we have lots of jobs in whatever space you want to get into, and it's your choice to choose that field of study in college, not somebody else's. So you made that choice, and then it's your job to go after. You have an obligation, if you want to work in that field, to go after the best available position. Sometimes it could be the person's lazy. They don't feel like it. It's easier to deliver for DoorDash than it is to go find the perfect job. Sometimes people don't want to move. Like it's a different world now. And there is a generation that's not willing to work as hard to go find, to do whatever it takes. But
hold on. Let's just stop the horse for 1 second. Are you indicting an entire generation as being less motivated and less, that the eye of the tiger?
No, I'm not indicting an entire generation.
Has been lost in the American 22-year-old. That the eye of the tiger that you had or Tony had.
No, what I'm saying is that you are saying I'm countering your argument.
I'm saying that the first job matters more than the degree. And that you
can't get that first job without the degree. So it's a ridiculous argument.
Even with the degree, you're not getting the job.
Says who?
Says the statistics. Look at the number of young men that are no longer going to university just over the last 4 or 5 years.
And look at the number of jobs that are available right now for a lot of, let's call it, there's a lot of jobs that require different levels of university skills that are going unfilled right now because we can't find people that are, and this is throughout all the industries, we can't find people with the right levels of education and with the right background. So I completely disagree with that argument. I think it's people that are making the argument that you're making that is actually really hurting young people. You're basically suggesting, hey, you know what? You'll be better off starting off as an electrician or a plumber or Uber driver, whatever it is, and then take it from there and see what happens and save all the money and don't go to college.
I think that you're in a situation. I know that young people are driven down a path and they're told that the only path is this path, and that they then complete that path only to find that the opportunities that they were told were going to be there are not there. And that's not because of anything. That's not because the young people are lazy. It's because the economy itself is in such a high rate of change where the efficiency and the need for writing, marketing, design, all these sort of mid-tier creative and intellectual jobs is evaporating this as a result of technology.
Were you told that there would be a job waiting for you when you graduated school?
I was not.
Were you
I didn't know what was going to happen the next.
Either did I. And I don't buy that whole premise that you just said, that we basically I don't think a single kid goes away to school when they're 18 or 19 years old and knows what they want to do or is being told that there is a job for them. What they're being told is if you work hard, okay, and if you study hard, and if you learn to be able to differentiate yourself and articulate things, that you will be able to find something. But that's on you. And I think that's all they're told. And so I don't think anybody goes to school knowing, hey, you know what? I'm going to get a job in doing X, Y, Z if I do this. I don't think that's the case at all. I think this is kind of a story that's been going around, that's being perpetuated by people the only reason I'm bringing up his name is because this was a Wall Street Journal article about a week or so ago with Mike Rowe. But the point being is that's just promoting his own show, Dirty Jobs or whatever it was. That's all it was, just self-promotion. And they're actors. We're in a situation where today more than ever, we need higher education. Now, the system's broken in the sense of what it costs. The cost structure is broken. The expenses involved are, they're outrageous for a lot of people. But that is completely different from, higher education in any way, shape, or form not being valuable.
Yeah, okay, I don't disagree with that. But to suggest that higher education is valuable at any price is equally preposterous.
I disagree. And the reason for it is because outside of a tiny, tiny group of outliers, like a minuscule, fraction of, whether it's 1/100th of 1%.
We'll call it statistically irrelevant.
Statistically irrelevant. Aside from the statistically irrelevant, okay, if you are going to get into some kind of professional or field that requires a certain intellectual background, you are not going to ever have that opportunity or be able to do it just simply because you decided, you can't be a lawyer without school, can't be a doctor, can't be an architect. I mean, I'm not suggesting those are the only things. Scientist. There's a million things you can't do. So
but it was legendary on the New York Stock Exchange that you could.
Of course, because you didn't have to be a rocket scientist to scream and yell. Okay, yeah, you're right. I grew up in a business where, a bunch of us came to Chicago because it was a whole different world. But again, and nobody could study for that. You couldn't prepare for that. And a lot of people without higher education came to the trading floors. But that's just the nature of that one particular job. A lot of people in sports do the same thing. That's the nature of that particular job. But I'm talking about on a broad scale. And this goes for any country. It's the same in China. It's the same in Japan. It's the same in Russia. It's the same in India. It's the same everywhere. You don't have those higher degrees, just an undergraduate degree, a master's degree, and in some places you're definitely going to need a PhD. If you don't have those degrees, you're not getting the jobs or the opportunities that you want. Period.
But my point is, even if you do have those degrees, more than ever, you're not getting those jobs, which is
and it's not on the education system. It's not on our system for that. It's on those people. In most cases, it's on those people. Either they're not being flexible enough and not willing to move somewhere. They're not being willing to take some other kind of role. They're not being willing to network.
Let's say I got three choices, right? I have the educational system I could hold accountable for that failure. I have the individual, the absence of hustle. Basically, what you're saying is like a little bit of hustle goes a long way. We all know hustle is the key here to everything.
Yeah.
And then three, you have the changing economy itself. And I guess where I'm coming from is less of an indictment of the educational system, but for the absurd obscenity of the pricing. I do agree with you to a certain extent that there's an aspect of cultural degradation of hustle. I don't know how else to describe it. And maybe that's ageist and judgmental of me, and I may be wrong.
Okay, whatever. It's close enough.
But that the economy, that the biggest variable is that the economy itself is changing in a way that the rate of change in the economy is so high that the nature of what jobs are is changing so quickly that is actually the biggest point of slippage, more than the lack of hustle and more than the excess of price and education. Do you disagree with that?
I do.
Why?
Because there is always change. The economy is always changing. The one thing about our economy is that, and this goes with any capitalistic, any democracy and any capitalistic system, we are dynamic. We are constantly changing. And this nature, the structure of the economy, the companies that drive the economy, the companies that are the most successful, the jobs at those companies that are the most successful companies, everything is always changing. Everything's always dynamic. I've been in the workplace now for over 40 years. We have not remained kind of in one place for more than, I don't know, 1 or 2 years in the 40 years I've been in the workforce. So to say all of a sudden in 2024 it's something different, no chance. Every single year. I mean, when I graduated college, we were in the middle of a recession. There was 0 jobs, 0. And you're lucky to get 1 interview. I got 1 interview, out of trying 100 different places. I think it's probably the same thing when you got out of school. Who knows?
It was. No, it was a recession. And
exactly.
2 interviews.
My whole point is, you know what? It's way better today. There's way more opportunity than there's ever been. And you know what? I can't accept the fact that it's like.
But let's just go straight to the elephant, because this is I want to agree with you. Listen, I have a stepdaughter who's 19, a couple of cousins, like young, and believe me, I'm like, got to go to school. I hold the line, right? I'm not there. Like, I'm not saying drop out of school and become a plumber. Okay. Although that's perfectly reasonable. So I'm not suggesting that I'm anti-education, but I am suggesting that we're at a moment where the match between the culture of education and the culture of the economy has a bigger gap than it has ever had, and the rate of change in the economy is the highest it's ever been, particularly for the types of entry-level jobs. So my first job, I'll just talk about, my first job was working at Bloomberg, and I was 22 years old, and they took a bunch of 22-year-olds, of which I was one of many, and shipped us off to a cornfield in southern New Jersey, and sort of made us work 16-hour days for 15 grand a year, whatever it was.
Detasseling corn? I'm just curious what you were doing. They shipped you up to a cornfield. Were you picking corn? You were detasseling corn? To build character? I didn't know that's what Bloomberg made there.
Mike Bloomberg's big thing was, if you can't harvest corn, you can't work here.
Exactly. I didn't realize that was Bloomberg's whole.
Listen, look, it worked for him. He made everybody run through the cornfield. If you couldn't come out with at least 100 corn cobs, you're fired. No, so they had a building in a cornfield that was like a campus, okay, where the point is, the job was to rewrite press releases. So the job was, Tasty Trade would put out, so they had reporters who would do real things, real reporters that would write, big fancy adult men and women that were big reporters, and then they would take the kids and they'd say, listen, you're going to take every press release of every BS little publicly traded cockamamie company that no one cares about, and you're going to rewrite their press release into a 4-paragraph summary of whatever it is. XYZ popcorn company just opened a store in Texas or whatever, some stupidity. And it was a constant task for all the 22-year-olds to rewrite as many press releases as possible, because Michael Bloomberg's thing was he wanted at least one news item under every publicly traded ticker that existed to create the appearance of sort of blanket coverage from Bloomberg, so that you could look at any stupid company. It was a brilliant strategy, marketing, sort of both in terms of presence, the illusion of comprehensive coverage, even when it was a much smaller company. My point is, a job like rewriting press releases, which is also training, how to work with an editor, how to do, there's so many aspects of that work that are not.
Okay, I'm not sure we're going with this.
AI can do it all now.
Oh my God. Have you seen AI try to do that?
AI can do it all now. Same thing with a marketing job. You go work at Edelman or one of the big agencies. Like those agencies are going to start dropping headcount. I mean, or go, I can go down the line.
So you're gonna pivot this into
I'm
an
not pivoting
AI.
anything.
No,
I'm
yeah,
not
yeah, you
pivoting
are.
anything.
You're pivoting this to an AI discussion.
No, I'm saying AI is the catalyst for the delta, the gap between where the economy is and what the jobs are and where the educational system is. Not to mention, who knows if anybody even writes their college papers anymore with AI. I don't even know if these kids are even doing their own homework anymore. And I don't know if anybody else knows either. But I don't want to, that's a real pivot. I don't want to go down that road. But you get my point.
I get your point, but I'm going to give you the other side to the argument. So there is the one side which says, "Oh my God, AI is going to kill," AI.
One third of the sort of mid-level creative jobs.
Yeah. They're going to change the Ramon song. AI killed the radio star. I got it. AI killed everything. AI killed the DJ, killed the radio star, killed the reporter.
You're being a little hyperbolic. You're being dramatic.
Okay, I know. AI killed everything. But the other side to that is AI is going to, the offset of that is AI is going to create a gazillion other jobs. Like it's AI, you don't come in and just replace something. If AI makes companies, and I'll give a little lesson in capitalism. If AI makes your company more efficient and it allows your company to make more money because you're more efficient, that makes your company worth more. But in order to maintain,
which is good for the 10 people that own it, who then become billionaires.
Hold on. You're jumping ahead. If you have a company and you're able to make that company more efficient by using AI, which may eliminate obviously some very simple jobs, but it may eliminate some jobs. In the process of doing that, making your company more efficient, it potentially makes your bottom line better, which makes your company more valuable. In order to maintain that growth rate, because your company is now more valuable, you have to hire more people because you have to grow the company. You can't hire more AI. You've already.
Yes, you can.
No. What you've done with AI, what AI is a very simple mechanism. It arbs out inefficiencies. And in this case, the inefficiencies are just an expense of X number of people that can be arbed out by automation. In the process of doing that, and by the way, AI needs a lot of oversight on top of that. There's nobody that can use just AI alone. AI basically has everything that AI produces.
Requires a manager.
AI, essentially everything AI produces has to be rewritten anyway. And it has to be cut down and done whatever. But we'll talk about that later. My point is, as AI makes your company more efficient and you start making more money, then you have to hire all new people to continue to build the company to maintain that level of growth. AI efficiency never kills the golden goose. Efficiency only fattens the golden goose, only makes the entire industry better and makes your entire business better, which means you end up hiring more people. Okay, AI just eliminates the inefficiencies and allows you to take that same money and pump it back in the system because you have to build other things. So I don't for 1 second believe that whole story, because that's not the way the economy works. It's not the way capitalism works. It's just the way that people, and I'm not saying this about you, but I'm just saying in general, the people that are very simple-minded think. It's a very simple-minded approach to trying to,
The simple mind is the mind that refuses to see reality, right? It's the simple mind is the one that resides in the comfort of one's own personal experience, and because the system has benefited that individual. I'm not talking about you, of course.
Of course.
Because the system has benefited a particular individual, that individual is inclined to think that system will benefit every individual at a time when the system itself is further actually enslaving, burdening these young people with the albatross of hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, while at the same time, and because of the debt, it limits. So I've had, how much debt did you have when you graduated from college?
$1,200.
Yeah. My number was something similar, maybe $4,000, $3,000. The point is, neither of us were, I did not have to make decisions about what job to take or where I would live or what I would do based on anxiety about immediately exiting university and having some 30-year stream of monthly payments that would limit my flexibility to
I understand that. But what you are advocating for is enslavement, the similar type of enslavement, but instead of through payments to pay off your school loans, you're advocating for it enslavement through choosing to be stupid. I don't, like you're saying, the better choice is, I'll tell you what my parents told me when, because my sister went to the same school that you went to, Union College, and I went in a similar area to Albany. Albany was a state school and Union College was a private school. And my parents sat us down, and they're both Columbia and Yale grads, and they said, we only have enough money for one private school, and we've chosen your sister. So because we think that she'll respect the money that we're spending and, put it to better use. And I didn't disagree with them. I'm like, I think that's a good choice. But my point is, like, that's your whole argument here. Like, they didn't say to me, you know what, don't go to school at all. We're going to send you to trade school because you'll be better off as, a plumber.
But they might have said that today.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Fair enough. The thing that most struck me, all of this aside, is the idea that the first placement out of school is more influential on the balance of your career than going to school at all.
Yeah, I disagree with that.
And I understand what you're saying, which is you don't even have a chance at a placement at a laboratory or a bank.
That's right.
Or an agency without the education.
Without the education, without the internships, without the experience, without the maturation, without everything. There's so much you learn. There's such a level of maturity that you gain. There's so much you learn. You learn how to articulate things. You talk to smart people. You know how this works. When you went away to college, I guarantee.
All of a sudden I meet people from New York City, California, people that have come from Lake Placid. A whole new group.
And when you go away to school, the first thing you're thinking when you come from a small town is, oh my God, I'm the smartest person in this town. The next thing you know, you get to school, you're like, oh wow, everybody here is smart.
Or smarter.
Or smarter.
And more and.
That's right.
So would you argue that that education is as valuable today as it was when you and I went to school?
I would probably argue it's more valuable. Why? I'm not saying more valuable on it. Like, it's way more.
I don't mean economically valuable. I'm just saying in terms of providing.
Oh God, yeah. I would argue it's way more valuable. Yes. Meaning
that the loss of opportunity if you don't go to university today is larger. In other words, the chances of a guy or a gal without a college education getting a job at DLJ or Bloomberg or whatever
is zero.
It was higher 20 or 30 years ago.
For sure.
Today.
For sure. Because I have a lot of friends in the field of finance that were able to work their way onto a trading floor through starting as clerks or runners and did without higher education because those places existed. None of those places exist today. Today, if you want to get into the trading business, you want to get in the hedge fund business, the trading business, you better be a data scientist, a technologist, or some form of a rocket scientist, because otherwise you're not even getting an interview.
It's interesting. I mean, I'm transitioning a little bit, but I'm just thinking about, because I was one of the first employees at Bloomberg as a reporter, not at the company, but on the news age. I was part of the first crop of the news agency staff, and we would watch each year people with better qualifications than any of us had coming in, to the point where within a few years, it was clear that if we applied now, we wouldn't have gotten the job.
Yeah.
And I think that that's actually remarkably common.
Well, hence the reason why I just said what I said, which is it's more important today
it was
than it
easier
ever.
to get a job at Tasty Trade 10 years ago than it is today.
Yeah.
And that the qualifications required to make it through the filters at Tasty Trade are higher today than they were in 2012.
I think they are at every firm.
Yeah.
So I think that proves the argument. Listen, how important it is. It's ridiculous to say it's not. And I think that people that argue against this, and it gets back to that Wall Street Journal article and many others like it, I understand there was a backlash with the whole, with the whole kind of Harvard, Palestine, and the whole issues that we've had.
That's a different.
No, I understand it's different, but it kind of casts like a little bit of a dark cloud over higher education, and then there's obviously the costs and student loans and all that kind of stuff. But you know what? Nothing's perfect, and we already know the system's broken with respect to costs. But is it critical? Yes. Is it more important today than it ever has been? And the answer is yes.
At the same time, does not technology allow more opportunities for the creation of opportunity for a young person without going to school?
Of course. Of course, the playing field.
So many because if I'm 18 or 17, I have access to all video editing. I mean, there's so many things that I can do.
Yes.
That have nothing to do with school.
Yes, Dylan, I'm agreeing. I can take classes. You can take classes. An 18-year-old can take classes from MIT if you want, the free classes, and then the paid for classes from Stanford. Yes, the opportunity to learn is greater than it's ever been, and some of it is incredibly inexpensive. Some of it's free. Is
the purpose of the degree a filter, not for education, but a filter for the ability to follow orders, the ability to show up on time,
to prove that you can be committed to something. Of course it is. To prove that you can earn something. Yes.
That you can eat shit and continue to move through it, whatever it is, and keep showing up. And that aspect is more important than any piece of knowledge one might acquire.
Well, I don't know if it's ever about the knowledge. I always thought it's about the networking and the friendships and the nonstop talk. Like you're out of the house. It's important. You're learning everything.
I have a friend of mine who runs a division of Pace University. I shouldn't even say the name of it. That works at some university. I already said it, but whatever. And their big issue is the absence of young men. There's been a collapse in the attendance of young men.
Yeah, that's a bad thing.
And that universities are still have many young women, in fact, many more young women than ever. But the participation rate for young men is in many universities at an all-time low.
Because there's this horrible, negative narrative put out there by people like kind of the argument that you were making before that is really hurting young men because they think, hey, you know what? I don't need to spend $100,000 or $200,000 or whatever it is because I can get to the same spot on my own through social media, through this or that. I can be the next Jake Paul. I can be the next TikTok star, whatever it is. I can make $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 a month. It doesn't matter. My point is that, that's the message we've sent. It's bad. It's bad. And those people, you know what? Those are the people that hurt the most when they're 30, 40, and 50.
The other factor that was suggested to me for that, which is a little bit of a non sequitur, but I'm going to say it because it's sort of bizarre and compelling. Young men used to go to university because they want to meet girls. Like if you're in Saranac Lake or Lake Placid and you want to meet girls, you got to be limited. You go to college, all of a sudden there's girls for miles, right? But with the advent of online dating, that the compulsion to go to school to meet girls for young men has substantially reduced because now they can just go to their phone and clickety click and whatever it is. That in other words, we actually, I mean, this is a different discussion, but I do think there's a crisis with young men in university specifically that is dangerous for the country because it encourages further disengagement. And that part of that issue is a lack of a sense of alternative. So it's either you go to college and deal with whatever or you got to go, you go work as a ski lift operator, at whatever, at Big Tupper or whatever it is. And that, I think Mike Rowe's point, although I agree with you on the self-promotional aspect, is that we need to do a better job of creating middle paths for people that's between Uber driver and finance intern.
Well, I think we've gone past our time here, so I'll let that be the final word. I think I made my point clear. You made your point clear. So, until next week, Mr. Radigan. This has been Truth or Skepticism. I'm Tom Sosnoff. He's Dylan Radigan. Join us every Wednesday, 1 p.m. Central Time. We cover different topics every single week, and we try to find topics that we don't always agree on. Makes it a lot more fun. Thanks, Dylan. Talk to you next week.
See you later.